Yesterday was the start of NBA free agency, but the Pittsburgh Steelers stole the headlines across the sports landscape when they made one trade with a big trade with the Dolphins, acquiring three-time All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey and tight end Jonnu Smith for three-time All-Pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a swap of draft picks. And then just hours later, our Adam Schefter dropped this nugget. In recent weeks, multiple teams have been discussing whether they can trade for T.J. Watt. You can just sign J.J., he's retired, who skipped the team's most recent minicamp. Watt is unhappy with his contract situation, and sources believe outside team interest is likely to increase given yesterday's trade. A lot of reaction pouring into this. Our own Dan Orlovsky summed it up best when he tweeted, "What is going on?" with no punctuation or anything. I don't know. I mean, Dan could be like in line at Disney and like it's not moving and we don't know. But let's assume that he was talking about everything the Steelers were up to yesterday, and Adam reporting that. We have Jeremy Fowler here. Jeremy, what is going on in Pittsburgh?
Dan, I'm trying to make sense of this right now. I actually just got off the phone, talked to some sources about this. And for the Steelers, this was a simple move. They feel like they have a never-ending quest to try to get a Super Bowl roster together, even if it's not perfect. Baltimore's getting better around them. The Cincinnati Bengals offense is getting better. So they figured Jalen Ramsey was a clear upgrade, that they have a guy who can play inside, traditional cornerback. He can play safety. But to them, this is not, the source I just talked to actually scoffed at the all-in notion. They said, we do this every year. This is just what we need to do to try to surround not only the team with the winner, but Aaron Rodgers. They feel like they have the best quarterback outlook they've had in 5 years. They have a capable option. They are trying to maximize it now. And as for the T.J. Watt situation, I was told this is sort of the cost of doing business. These negotiations get tricky. They get sticky. They're hard to go through. The Steelers remain optimistic that they can try to reach a deal with Watt at some point. That would be the goal. Executives I've talked to with some other teams do not expect Watt to be traded. It is interesting. Teams are talking about this, what it would take to potentially acquire him, but there's not a lot of feeling or sense around the league I get that he's going to be moved.
Sure. I mean, as long as he's unsigned and seemingly unhappy, I'm sure there'll be plenty of conversations in front offices about, hey, do you guys think we could possibly do this? But as of now, it seems like he'll be in Pittsburgh and they'll probably get him signed. In terms of the trade that went down yesterday and the sort of overhaul of the secondary, bringing in the new tight end, E.J., what did you think about the Steelers' moves?
Well, Graz, I love the move, and I think you address a lot of areas to try to help your roster get better. And look, this is a maximization of 2025, at least at this point in the offseason. You bring in a Jalen Ramsey who can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play outside corner. You link in with guys like Darius Slay, who just won the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. You also got Joey Porter Jr., who's playing really well as a young corner. And you got to think about the receivers that they're going to have to cover in their division. You think about Jamar Chase, you think about T. Higgins, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Jerry Jeudy with Cleveland. So many vaunted receivers and receiving cores that you want to have a really good secondary with. And the addition of Jonnu Smith was fantastic. When you think about Aaron Rodgers, this point in his career, guys, if you play a lot of 12 personnel, which is one running back, two tight ends, two receivers, you're able to help protect Aaron Rodgers and keep him upright because you got two tight ends inside. But also, Jonnu Smith is a guy who can play tight end, but he's really a receiver. So you're almost getting 12 personnel, but 11 personnel principles with his type of speed and his ability. And look, I work out at the same gym as Jonnu Smith. This guy's been working his tail off the entire offseason. So I was really happy to see him get rewarded, obviously, with a new move now going to Pittsburgh. And I guarantee you, Arthur Smith is going to feature him in this offense. You think back when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans, that's where Jonnu Smith had a lot of success earlier in his career as well. So it all makes a ton of sense for the Steelers, and I think it makes sense for the Dolphins too.
What do you think, D. Wood?
If this was 3 years ago, I would be much more excited, to be honest with you. Listen, if you look at the totality of all the moves that the Pittsburgh Steelers have made, quite honestly, they've gotten older at a lot of the critical position that's required to win big-time football games. You got a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Darius Slay is like the second oldest cornerback in the National Football League. He's 30. He's in his mid-30s. Cam Hayward is 36. T.J. Watt is, very good player. He's 30. Jalen Ramsey's 30. All of these guys, big-name guys, but they're up there in age. And a 17-game slate, if you wanted to make a run, the number one thing that you got to deal with is health. Can these guys stay healthy enough to make a run for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm highly skeptical of that playing itself out.
And Jeremy, you mentioned like your Steelers people saying we do this every year. That graphic we just showed, I mean, that's a lot of turnover in one offseason for this organization. It feels different. Does it not feel different to you as somebody who covered them for a long time and is kind of used to how they do business?
Yeah, from the outside, Dan, it does look a little bit like a panicked move. But when I talk to people and ask them about that, I was told like they try to treat it on a case-by-case basis. They feel like these are just simply upgrades and that these guys can hold up. Jalen Ramsey's 30 years old. Steelers feel like he has a lot of juice. He's not playing like an old player. Jonnu Smith was one of the best yards after catch players in the entire league last year. So they feel like he's going to get Aaron Rodgers easy yards. When they trade DK Metcalf and replace him with George Pickens, moving him to Dallas, they feel like that's better for the locker room too, not only from an ability standpoint. So they feel like they've gotten better, but it's not going to last. This is not a 2026 conversation. This is 2025, and it does feel very boom or bust for a team that never rebuilds and always tries to hang in there, but sort of stuck living in the middle right now in that 9 or 10 win range. They're trying to get over that hump.
If you bring in a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, and I remember having some conversations with people in that building, and they were patient with Aaron Rodgers. They said, look, we don't mind going through the draft and having Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, all these guys available, but they end up going with Will Howard, who I think is more of a developmental quarterback, and it's a good plan because now you bring in Aaron Rodgers. So sure, there are abilities where this doesn't go right, but ultimately, if I'm the Steelers, you got to entice a guy like Aaron Rodgers to want to, come and join your football team. And why not try to load up in all the areas where you can play really good defense? You also have a solid offensive line with some young players up front. And so I expect good things to come out of Pittsburgh. And look, Woody makes a great point. Like, if these guys aren't healthy, then all is lost. But ultimately, this is the best way to try to vaunt up your roster, have some depth as well with some young guys behind these starters. And I still think they can go out there and win some playoff games.
Maybe I'm just a cynic, but this reminds me of something. It reminds me, because we've talked so much about Mike Tomlin and could he have his Andy Reid pivot in his coaching career, because it reminds me of that 2011 Eagles team that kind of did in, Andy when it didn't go so well. Do you imagine that the bottom could fall out here?
It could, absolutely. And listen, Mike Tomlin's a Hall of Fame head coach. We all understand that. But again, I go back to my original point is, a lot of the critical positions for the Pittsburgh Steelers, those guys are older.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's what you're relying upon if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've pushed your chips all in for this year with all the name brands that you've brought in. But if this thing goes sideways, I look at a possible reboot for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026,
which is something we have not seen in a very long time. Certainly interesting, and we'll certainly keep an eye on it going forward. We have more on this as we move along on Get Up. Absence from the team's most recent minicamp has sent a loud and clear message around the league, and according to our Adam Schefter, multiple teams have been discussing whether they can trade for him. The Steelers haven't shown any willingness to deal Watt, and they remain adamant that they want him to finish his career in Pittsburgh. But that is not going to stop us, Damien Woody, from speculating about who should be picking up the phone if Pittsburgh changes their mind and makes T.J. Watt available. What team do you think?
How about the Washington Commanders?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, the Commanders are ahead of schedule. We saw the year that they had last year. Obviously, they got a superstar quarterback in Jaden Daniels. We saw the team make acquisitions. Deebo Samuel come over, add another weapon. We saw, them add Laramie Tunsil to add more protection around them. I think the one thing when you look at the Washington Commanders on the defensive side is lack of pass rush.
Sure.
Well, guess who can solve that? A guy like T.J. Watt, and your superstar quarterback is on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
That would be, to me, the most enticing reason to go out there and be aggressive and be bold.
We see this a lot, Jeremy, with teams with the quarterback on the rookie deal trying to maximize that window, and Washington's moves this offseason have indicated they feel that way. Do you agree with D. Wood? In a hypothetical world where T.J. Watt's available, is that the team you'd want to put him on?
Yes, D. Wood, when I looked at Washington's depth chart, it just screams. Add a pass rusher, add an elite guy there, and then you've got everything you need. The problem is they just don't have a lot of draft picks, making all the trades they did. Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, Marshawn Lattimore. So Washington still makes the most sense to me, but I want to add another quick team. It would be perfect is the Green Bay Packers, because they were quietly looking around for pass rush this offseason. He's from Wisconsin. It would make so much sense if they could somehow pull that off.
Wow, yeah. I mean, you say Washington out of draft picks, but the Pittsburgh Steelers clearly are okay with doing like a player for player, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? Again, we're down the speculative road. They asked me for a pick. I said Buffalo. This is a team that's right there on the edge, right? And I know they got Joey Bosa, but I think at this point in his career, you'd say T.J. Watt is probably better and a higher impact player. So, yeah, that would be the team for me. That one last step to get them over that hump finally in the playoffs. But, of course, it may not matter. Pittsburgh probably not going to trade him.